they have been secret, the fact that there has been a unilateral increase in enforcement, something which is creating concern for us. The other aspect is the fact that I've mentioned earlier, that there's been an asymmetricity in the approach. So while you look at one aspect of IP, you do not look at all the aspects, which need to be looked at for a balanced agreement to be there. And I guess it should be agreed that rights come with a certain balance. They cannot be overriding rights. Another very important issue is that enhanced enforcements have costs on governments. And they also lead to efficiency losses in case they are absolutely increased enforcement levels. They've got to be suitably balanced in the context that I have already explained. You cannot discuss enforcement levels of increasing enforcement levels in such a non-inclusive manner where you are actually talking about a situation where it's a parallel system that you follow for countries that account for 70% of trade. Effectively, it will affect all the countries, all the member countries. And what we fear with the condition that it will be open for accession by non-member countries is extremely frightening. It means that you're going to use this as a handle in free trade agreement negotiations, which is wrong. You are using a position of strength to ask your trading partner to agree to it, to a situation which is unequal because he doesn't have any role in determining the policy on enforcement. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll start with a few questions there, I think, from Chandi's presentation. Please, I would encourage you again, stick your hand up if you want to make comments at any point. Anyone who wants to equally ask questions, please do. And maybe start off with a point about having a plurilateral process rather than a multilateral one, and whether that harms things in the future. Would Jorge or Koji like to respond to that?
Well, as I understand, I think that TRIPS is the floor. It's not the ceiling. And that makes TRIPS, let's say, an agreement that was negotiated many years ago. And I don't see any problem in having this kind of ACTA agreement on part of IP scenario. This is enforcement, this is counterfeiting and piracy only. As I said, we do not touch any other rights in this ACTA agreement. We have another kind of agreements dealing in, let's say, WIPO, like the genetic resources, traditional knowledge and folklore, which is specific also, and many others. No? So, but I may say that this is not an obligation. This, I don't agree that ACTA will have or put some pressure in the new countries that would like to be a member of ACTA. This is a voluntary agreement. If you want to be part of it, do it. If not, don't join ACTA. And on the other hand, I think that we have also one very strong word, which is sovereignty. And we have sovereignty to deal whatever we want. So if we need this kind of agreement in order to enhance enforcement in Mexico, we will do it. And I don't care if we are NAFTA parties or with the European Union parties or with other or APEC member. This is a national decision. Of course, that the impact is plurilateral, because as you said, Madam Reina, we are talking about 70% of the economic production and everything. Okay, that's why we decided to go into ACTA. See, so that's what I think.
For one thing, the impact is not plurilateral. That's the sad part of it. It is multilateral. So you have a plurilateral agreement which discusses multilateral manifestations, which itself is asymmetric completely. It is not right. And the issue that whether substantive provisions are part of ACTA or not is a debatable issue, because as I highlighted, there are issues that are of concern to us, and substantive provisions are there. I'd like to highlight one aspect which is there mentioned in ACTA. It says that the ACTA agreement, the parties to this ACTA agreement can go beyond enforcement levels that are mandated in ACTA, as long as they do not violate the provisions of ACTA. Now here you have a completely shift. There is no mention of TRIPS. So you have a situation where you're just moving away, saying that now we have ACTA, we can go beyond ACTA as long as we are all right with, as long as we don't contravene the provisions of ACTA. This is a slow and steady movement towards higher levels of IPR enforcement, and in substantively also, countries like us feel that it is substantive as well. In any case, the fact that you've kept it secret, you have not discussed it, you have not allayed our fears in that sense. So now this is something that this is what we feel, and we've just happened to see the text in December when it was made public. So it is only since then that we're looking at it, and we are quite disturbed by what is happening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Regarding, I just want to make, say, maybe 2 points in this sense. First, is the TRIPS and ACTA two totally different kind of framework, contractual framework. That's the question, the first question I want to address. In my view, in our understanding, ACTA is not something against the TRIPS. ACTA is building upon the TRIPS. Our aim is to stay, of course, all the members, participants into the ACTA negotiations are TRIPS members, and we will remain TRIPS members. So we will be bound by the TRIPS obligations, and that is the baseline. We build on the TRIPS principles. So let me just make reference to one very fundamental provisions of the TRIPS, and also fundamental provisions of ACTA. Article the TRIPS, Article 1, Paragraph 1, nature and scope of the obligations. This is from the TRIPS. Members of the TRIPS may, but shall not be obliged to implement in their law more extensive protection than is required by this agreement. This agreement meaning TRIPS, of course. So the TRIPS members are, at the minimum, as George said, at the minimum implement in their law the minimum level of enforcement that is required in the TRIPS. But on the other hand, all the members of the TRIPS are free to implement more extensively. So they are free to implement TRIPS Plus. And if a certain number of members of the TRIPS want to implement TRIPS Plus, and in reality, including India, China, and many other developing countries are implementing TRIPS Plus in their national legislations. And if they want to do TRIPS Plus in their national legislations, why not do it more effectively and cost effectively, of course? That is one of the reasons why we wanted to start discussion about ACTA. If we want to do it TRIPS Plus, of course, as a national governments, we want to do it more effectively, and we want to find more efficient tools to implement more TRIPS Plus. And of course, since we remain TRIPS members, we also continue to be bound by the TRIPS, and the TRIPS flexibilities will remain among the TRIPS members. So another one article in that relation I want to mention is the Article 1 of ACTA. Nothing in this agreement, this time this agreement meaning ACTA, nothing in this agreement shall derogate from any obligation of a party with respect to any other party under existing agreements, including the TRIPS agreement. So the future members of ACTA continue to be bound by TRIPS. And so all the flexibilities, safeguards that are provided in the TRIPS in relation to other members of the TRIPS, non-parties of ACTA, will remain valid. So that's one thing I want to make clear. We are building on the TRIPS agreement, and ACTA intention of the ACTA members is to, since we are sort of voluntary countries in the world, we want to make more efficient TRIPS plus enforcement. And if we want to make it more efficient, why not working together, building upon others' experience? We don't do it separately. So that is the purpose of ACTA, building on TRIPS. Another thing, just briefly on the scan point, sorry. Yes. Are we going to work in a position of power over other members of the TRIPS? Of course, I understand the kind of fear that those non-participating countries to ACTA negotiations are surprised because it came out, and they have a lot of questions. That's quite natural. So I'm very glad that we have this occasion today, and this kind of occasion will be need to be multiplied. But on the other hand, as George said, all the members of the TRIPS and ACTA, all of them are sovereign countries. So they will decide on their own whether or not to participate into ACTA or not. So thank you.
That's okay. I think we only have about 5 minutes, so I'd like to stay on this topic of the process of ACTA. I think Jorge had a quick comment, and then see if we've got some comments or questions from the floor as well, if that's okay.
Well, let me share with you some practical things that happened. And maybe that's another reason of why we decided, all of the countries, not to make public the text during the negotiations. And that is because we have a text full of brackets. Bracket plus bracket plus bracket. And then we have the US brackets, the Japan brackets, the Korean brackets, the Mexican brackets. We cannot make public this because only in the case of Mexico, we never will agree to publish the Mexican brackets because that's part of the negotiation and that's part of the strategy. So that's why we decided not to publish the text with brackets because no one, difficult for us to understand each paragraph full of brackets. And by 2 o'clock in the morning, you never know who put that bracket and what was the meaning of the bracket. And let me tell you one thing. We use one bracket in the Mexican case dealing with the ex officio powers for the Attorney General that we, of course, said never. We won't have it. So we have a Mexican bracket for months. But what happened? Suddenly, the Congress, the Mexican Congress, approved the modification of the criminal code and gave ex officio powers to the Attorney General. So we came to ACTA and we delete the bracket. So that's very practical, no?
Good afternoon. I'm Pedro Velasco from the European Commission. Was negotiating ACTA for the last 3